The night was cold and silent. The city streets were almost empty. A soft rain fell, painting the roads with silver light. Street lamps flickered, and the sound of dripping water echoed through narrow alleys. John Miller walked alone, his jacket soaked and his shoes heavy with mud. He was a single father, tired after another long day at the factory. His son had died years ago, and since then, his life had lost its color. Every night he walked the same road home, quiet, lonely, and without hope. But this night was different. As John passed a dark alley behind the old store, he heard a sound, a soft, trembling cry. At first, he thought it was a cat. But when he stopped and listened again, it sounded different, almost like a baby's cry, but higher, sharper, strange. John's heart began to beat faster. He turned and followed the sound. The rain grew heavier and thunder rolled above. At the end of the alley, next to a pile of broken boxes and trash, he saw a small metal bin. The crying came from inside it. Slowly, he stepped closer. He hesitated. "Hello?" he said softly. No answer, just the same sad, weak cry. He bent down, lifted the lid, and froze. Inside, wrapped in a dirty cloth, was a tiny creature, small like a baby, but its skin glowed faint blue. Its eyes were large, shining like liquid silver. It looked at him and stopped crying, as if it could sense something safe about him. John stared, confused and afraid. What are you?" he whispered. The little being blinked, then reached out a trembling hand, small fingers glowing faintly. For a moment, John wanted to run. He thought it was some kind of experiment or maybe a sick joke. But when the creature's hand touched his, he felt warmth, real warmth, like a heartbeat. The touch was soft and gentle, and suddenly he felt something deep inside, something he hadn't felt in years. Compassion. He looked around. No one was there. The city was asleep. Then he noticed the creature was cold, shaking, and weak. Without thinking, John took off his coat and wrapped the baby in it. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe now." He lifted it into his arms. The glow grew stronger, as if it recognized comfort. But just then a strange sound came from the sky, a deep humming, like an engine far above the clouds. John looked up and saw faint lights moving behind the storm. 3 red beams swept across the night sky, scanning the streets. John's heart pounded. Someone, or something, was searching. He held the baby close and ran out of the alley. The rain turned to fog, covering his path. Behind him, the red beams grew brighter. He didn't look back. After a few blocks, he reached his small house at the edge of the city. He locked the door, pulled the curtains, and laid the baby gently on his old couch. It looked peaceful now, eyes closed, glowing softly. John stared at it for a long time. He had seen many strange things in his life, but never anything like this. He poured himself some coffee, sat near the creature, and whispered, "Where did you come from?" The baby didn't answer, but a faint sound came from its chest, like a soft hum, almost musical. The lights in his house flickered for a second, then returned to normal. John smiled a little, despite the fear. "Guess you're full of surprises," he said. Outside, the rain stopped. The street was quiet again. But high above the clouds, a small craft hovered silently, scanning the ground. A voice echoed through the static, cold and mechanical. "Target energy signature detected. Begin ground sweep." Inside the house, John sat beside the baby until he fell asleep on the couch. The creature moved closer, placing its tiny hand on his arm. For the first time in years, John dreamed, not of loss, but of light. And as the night deepened, a faint blue glow filled the room. The baby's eyes opened again, staring at the ceiling as if sensing something coming. Its small lips moved, forming a word no human had ever heard. Outside, a red laser scanned across John's door. The hunt had already begun. Morning came slowly. The rain had stopped and weak sunlight pushed through the clouds. John woke up on the couch, the smell of cold coffee still in the air. For a moment he didn't remember what had happened the night before, until he saw the small shape lying beside him. The baby. It was awake now, sitting quietly, eyes glowing faint blue. It watched him, curious, tilting its small head like a cat. John rubbed his eyes and sat up. "So you're real," he said softly. The little creature blinked, then smiled, a small, strange smile that melted away his fear. Its skin shimmered faintly as if tiny lights moved under it. John felt a strange peace looking at it. He brought a bowl of warm milk from the kitchen. "I don't know what you eat," he said. The creature sniffed the milk, then placed its hand over the bowl. A soft light passed from its fingers, and the milk glowed for a second. Then it drank. John laughed quietly. "Guess you like it your way." The house was small. One bedroom, one couch, a few pictures on the wall. In one photo, a young boy smiled beside John. His name was Sam, John's son, who had died in an accident 3 years ago. Since then, John had lived like a shadow. Now looking at this strange little being, something inside him began to heal. He decided to call the baby Lumo. It meant light. A name that felt right. Days passed. Lumo began to explore the house. He didn't talk, but he made small sounds, humming tones that seemed to carry meaning. When John was sad, Lumo's skin glowed warm yellow. When John smiled, it turned green, soft like spring leaves. At night, they sat by the window. John told stories about stars, planets, and the life he once dreamed of. Lumo listened, eyes wide and bright. Sometimes he raised his hand toward the sky as if he missed something far away. One evening, while John fixed an old radio, it suddenly came alive on its own. Static filled the room, then a voice whispered through, cold and metallic. "Energy trace confirmed. Subject remains active." John froze. He looked at Lumo. The baby's glow dimmed and his eyes filled with fear. He understood the words, even if John didn't. "Hey, what's wrong?" John asked gently. Lumo crawled closer and hid behind him. The lights in the room flickered again. John could feel a vibration in the air like a storm was coming. He turned off the radio, grabbed a blanket, and held Lumo close. "It's okay, you're safe," he whispered. That night, John couldn't sleep. He sat awake thinking. Whoever those voices were, they were searching for something. And if it was this little creature, they'd come here. In the middle of the night, he heard footsteps outside. Slow, heavy, metallic. He looked out the window and nothing but fog. Still, his heart beat fast. Lumo was awake, eyes glowing faintly blue again. He looked at John, then pointed toward the door. John understood. Something, or someone, was near. He turned off the lights and moved quietly to the window. A dark shadow passed across the street. Then another. They weren't human, their movements were too smooth, too quiet. John held his breath. The shadows disappeared into the mist. He turned back to Lumo. The baby reached out and touched his chest. A gentle warmth spread through John's body, like sunlight after winter. For the first time, he didn't feel fear, only determination. The next morning, he packed a small bag, food, water, an old map, and his late son's pendant. "We're leaving town for a while," he said. Lumo looked up, eyes full of trust. John smiled. "We'll find a safe place. I promise." They left just before dawn, walking through quiet streets covered in fog. As they moved, Lumo's glow faded so they wouldn't be seen. Behind them, far away, 4 lights moved in the clouds, red, sharp, searching. John didn't see them. But Lumo did. He turned his head and stared at the sky, a soft sound escaping his lips. A sad, distant note that echoed through the wind. Something in that sound made John's heart ache. He didn't know why. He only knew one thing now. He would protect Lumo no matter what. As they disappeared into the forest beyond the city, the same cold voice spoke again from above. Target confirmed. Authorization to engage. The hunt had begun, but this time the father was ready to fight. The forest was quiet at dawn. Thin fog floated between the trees and sunlight fell in pale lines across the ground. Birds sang softly, unaware of the danger that had just entered Earth's atmosphere. High above the clouds, 4 glowing streaks cut through the sky, silver ships, silent and fast. They moved like hunters following a scent. Inside each ship sat an elite soldier of the Galactic Order. Their mission was simple: find the escaped subject and eliminate the human who sheltered it. The leader, Commander Varric, sat in the front craft. His armor shimmered black and red, marked with alien symbols. His eyes were sharp and cold, trained for war. "Scan the surface," he ordered. "Trace the infant's energy signal. It must not survive." The ship split apart, spreading across the region. They scanned valleys, cities, and forests, until a faint blue pulse appeared on their sensors. Varric smiled. "Found you." Down below, John and Lumo were resting in a small cabin deep in the woods. John had found the old shelter years ago, back when he used to go camping with his son. It was dusty and broken, but safe, or so he thought. He built a small fire, boiling water in a tin pot. Lumo sat nearby, holding a piece of bread, curious about everything. Every time John smiled, Lumo copied him like a small mirror. For a moment, everything felt almost normal, almost peaceful. Then the air changed. The birds stopped singing. The forest went silent. John looked up. "You feel that?" Lumo's glow faded. He turned toward the window, eyes wide with fear. A deep humming filled the air, low and mechanical. Leaves shook. The old cabin walls trembled slightly. John stepped outside. In the sky, 3 red lights moved slowly through the clouds. They weren't planes. They were searching. John's heart pounded. He ran back inside. "We have to go now." He grabbed his bag and wrapped Lumo in his jacket. They ran through the forest, branches snapping underfoot. Behind them, the red lights grew brighter. Moments later, a beam of light hit the cabin, and it exploded in fire. John and Lumo fell to the ground, covered in dirt and smoke. Lumo made a soft whimpering sound, scared but unharmed. John picked him up and kept running. Above the burning cabin, Commander Varric landed. His soldiers, tall, armored figures with glowing visors, surrounded the wreck. One knelt and touched the ground. Energy trail confirmed. The infant was here. Varric looked around, his face emotionless. "The human has taken it. Pursue." The soldiers spread out, moving with inhuman speed. Their armor made no sound, and their scanners glowed red in the fog. John heard them behind him. Fast, too fast. He hid behind a large rock, holding Lumo close. He whispered, "Stay quiet." The soldiers passed nearby, scanning with strange devices. One stopped suddenly, head turning toward the rock. John held his breath. The soldier took a step closer, then stopped. Lumo raised his small hand and the soldier's visor flickered. For a moment it was as if he couldn't see them. Then the soldier turned away and continued searching elsewhere. John exhaled, whispering, "You did that?" Lumo's eyes glowed softly. After the soldiers moved on, John climbed a hill overlooking the valley. He saw their ships in the distance, sleek, dark shapes scanning the ground with red light. He realized they weren't human. This wasn't a rescue team. It was a hunt. He looked down at Lumo. "They want you back." "But why?" Lumo didn't answer, just touched John's hand and showed him something. For a second, John's mind filled with images, fire, war, and darkness. Cities burning, stars dying, and in the middle of it all, Lumo's people, small, bright beings of light, running from soldiers dressed just like these. John gasped and stepped back. "They killed your people, and now they want to finish the job." He clenched his fists. "Not while I'm alive." As night fell again, Varric stood before his soldiers near the crash site. His armor gleamed under the red light of his ship. "The target is protected by the human," one soldier reported. "The infant's power is unstable. If it bonds further, extraction will be impossible." Varric's voice was calm but deadly. "Then kill the man. Bring the infant back alive." The soldiers bowed and vanished into the trees. Far away, John found a small cave to rest in. He built a small fire again, this time with shaking hands. Lumo watched him quietly. John looked at the flames. "They're coming for us, kid. But we'll make it. You're not alone anymore." He smiled weakly, though fear filled his heart. Lumo reached out, touched his face, and whispered his first word. Soft, almost human. "Dad!" John froze. Then, slowly, a tear rolled down his cheek. Outside, the forest glowed faint red. The hunters were closing in. The war for one small alien child and one father's soul had just begun. The forest burned behind them. Orange flames climbed the trees, lighting the night sky. John ran as fast as he could, branches cutting his arms, lungs burning. Lumo was held tight against his chest, his soft glow hidden under John's jacket. Every breath felt heavy, but he didn't stop. Behind them, the sound of engines echoed through the woods. The soldiers were coming. They moved fast, shadows with red eyes, silent and deadly. Each step they took sent a low metallic thud through the ground. Drones flew above, scanning with red beams that cut through fog and smoke. John slipped on wet leaves but didn't fall. He couldn't afford to. He knew that if he stopped, even for a second, they would die. He reached a small river cutting through the forest. The water was cold and wild, but it was the only way forward. He stepped in, holding Lumo tight. The current was strong, dragging at his legs, but he pushed on. "Hang in there, little guy," he said, his voice trembling. Lumo looked up, eyes glowing faintly blue. He touched John's chest, and suddenly the cold didn't feel so bad anymore. The warmth spread through him, giving him strength. They crossed to the other side, soaking wet but alive. John hid behind a fallen tree, trying to catch his breath. Then he heard it, the sound of metal footsteps nearby. The soldiers had found their trail again. A red light swept across the trees. John ducked, holding Lumo close. The beam passed inches above them. He could hear the soldiers' voices. Strange. Robotic tones speaking in another language. One of them stopped and looked directly toward the fallen tree. John's heart froze. He reached slowly for a rock beside him. If they saw him, he'd have to fight. But before he could move, Lumo crawled out of his arms. "Lumo, no," John whispered. The little alien lifted his hand. His eyes glowed brighter, pulsing with light. For a second, everything went still. The wind, the trees, even the soldiers. Then, with a flash, the red scanners on their helmets shut down. Their armor flickered, their movements slowed. The forest went dark and silent again. John stared in shock. Lumo had stopped them, or maybe hidden them somehow. "Kid," John whispered, "you just saved us." Lumo smiled weakly, but then his glow dimmed. He looked tired, his body trembling. Using that power had drained him. John quickly wrapped him up again and stood. "Let's get out of here before they recover." They walked for hours until they reached an old hunting cabin near the edge of the forest. John pushed the door open, and dusty, empty, but safe. He set Lumo down gently on a blanket and lit a small lantern. Lumo's breathing was slow, his skin pale blue now instead of bright. John knelt beside him. "You okay?" Lumo looked at him with sleepy eyes and reached for his hand. When their hands touched, John saw something. Flashes of memory. A planet full of light. Cities in the clouds. Lumo's people, unkind, peaceful, glowing like stars. Then explosions, fire. Soldiers in black armor, just like the ones chasing them. Lumo's mother holding him, tears in her eyes, placing him in a pod. The pod shooting into space. John gasped and pulled back. His eyes filled with tears. "You were running from them all along." He looked at the small creature beside him, no longer as a strange alien, but as a child who had lost everything. "You're not a weapon," John whispered. "You're just a kid." Outside, thunder rolled again. The storm was returning. John packed a few things: food, flashlight, an old rifle he found in the cabin. He knew this peace wouldn't last. Then he heard it again, that low hum in the distance. The soldiers were back online. John took one last look at Lumo and whispered, "I'm not losing you too." He lifted the child and opened a trap door in the cabin floor, an old escape tunnel used by hunters. They climbed down, crawling through the narrow path that led deeper underground. As they moved, Lumo opened his eyes again and whispered a single word in his soft, echoing voice. "Run!" John nodded. "I'm already doing that, buddy." Above them, Commander Varric stood in the ruins of the old cabin, his armor glowing red in the firelight. "The human is resourceful," one soldier said. Varric looked toward the dark forest. "He won't hide forever. The child is weakening. When his power fades, the human will die trying to protect him." He raised his arm and his ship hummed to life. "Prepare the drones. By dawn, we end this." Deep underground, John and Lumo reached the end of the tunnel, an exit opening into a valley filled with fog. John took a deep breath of cold air. Above them, the night sky shimmered with stars. He whispered, "No matter where you came from, kid, you're my family now." Lumo's small hand tightened around his. His glow brightened again. Not blue this time, but gold. The forest trembled softly as if answering him. The bond between them had become unbreakable, and the war for that bond was far from over. The morning sun rose behind the mountains, pale and weak through the mist. John and Lumo walked slowly across a valley covered with dew. The night's escape had left them both exhausted. John's clothes were torn, his hands scratched, but he didn't care. Every step now was for Lumo. They followed a narrow path through tall grass until John saw something strange ahead. A black mark on the hillside, like burned earth. He stopped. "Stay close," he said softly. As they got nearer, he saw the ground had been ripped open, a long scar across the soil. ending in a crater. Smoke still rose faintly from it. In the center, half buried, was a metal pod. Small, round, and covered in strange symbols that glowed faintly blue. John's breath caught. "So this is where you came from." Lumo stepped forward, touching the edge of the pod. The symbols reacted to his touch, glowing brighter. A low hum filled the air. Then a light shot upward, forming a hologram in front of them. It showed a woman, not human but like Lumo, with eyes that shimmered like stars. Her voice was soft, echoing with sorrow. "If you are hearing this, my child, then I am gone." John stood frozen. The voice continued. "Our world is lost. The soldiers of the Order destroyed everything. You must survive. The human race may still have kindness left in it. Trust them, as I once did." The image flickered, then shifted to scenes of war, planets burning, fleets of ships, and black-armored soldiers led by a tall figure with glowing red eyes. "Commander Varric, he will hunt you," the woman's voice said. "He seeks the power that sleeps within you and the light seed. If he takes it, no world will be safe." The hologram faded. The pod dimmed again, leaving silence behind. John sank to his knees, trying to breathe. "They wiped out your people, and now they're coming for you." Lumo's eyes filled with light, but it wasn't fear this time. It was sadness. He reached out, touching John's shoulder. John whispered, "I won't let them take you. I promise." The promise didn't last long before the sound of engines echoed through the valley again. John quickly covered the pod with dirt and pulled Lumo behind a rock. 3 drones flew overhead, scanning the ground with red light. One passed close, too close. John's heart hammered. Lumo lifted his small hand again, and for a brief second his eyes glowed gold. The drones hesitated in the air, their sensors flickering, then turned away. John exhaled slowly. "You saved us again," but Lumo didn't smile this time. His glow dimmed even faster than before. He leaned against John's chest, tired and weak. "You can't keep using that power," John said softly. "It's killing you." He picked Lumo up and started walking away from the crater. His mind raced with questions. Well, what was the light seed? Why did that alien woman trust humans? And why him of all people? They reached an abandoned ranger station on the far side of the valley. Inside, John found a working generator, some canned food, and a radio. He tried turning it on, but all he got was static. "Come on," he muttered, hitting the side of it. Then a voice broke through, clear and sharp. "Subject located. Energy pulse confirmed near Sector 9. All units converge." John froze. They had tracked the pod. He turned to Lumo. "We have to move, now." But Lumo was already looking out the window. A single tear of light rolled down his cheek. "No," he said softly. Only one word, but it carried weight. John frowned. "What do you mean, no?" Lumo looked at him, eyes glowing faint gold. "Hide, pod, no." "Them." John realized what he meant. The soldiers were coming for the pod, not just for Lumo. He ran outside, lifted the heavy piece of metal he had covered the crater with, and grabbed the pod. It was warm, vibrating slightly like a living heart. He looked at the mountains beyond the forest. "We'll bury it where they'll never find it." As the sun began to set, they reached a cliff overlooking the forest. John dug deep into the rocky soil, his hands bleeding, sweat dripping down his face. He placed the pod in the ground and covered it carefully. When it was done, he knelt beside Lumo. "It's safe now." Lumo looked at him, a faint smile returning. He raised his hand and the ground glowed faintly, sealing the hiding spot with light. John stood, breathing heavily. They'll never find it. But in the sky above, 4 red lights blinked through the clouds and drawing closer. Lumo saw them first. His body stiffened, eyes wide. Here," he whispered. John turned and saw the red beams sweeping across the valley again. The soldiers were descending fast. He grabbed Lumo and started running toward the woods. "Hang on, kid. We're not done yet." The ground shook as explosions hit behind them. Dirt and fire flew through the air. As they disappeared into the forest, Commander Varric landed near the cliff. He looked at the sealed ground where the pod had been buried. He smiled, cold and cruel. "Smart human," he said quietly, "but not smart enough." He raised his hand and the scanners began to hum again. The hunt for the truth was over. Now it was war. The forest was quiet before the storm. John stood at the edge of the clearing, his face covered in dirt, his eyes tired but burning with purpose. Behind him, the small cabin they had found was surrounded by traps, wires, sharpened sticks, and explosives made from old mining supplies. The sky was dark and heavy. Thunder rolled above like distant drums of war. John checked the last wire and tightened the trigger. Every part of him ached, but he kept going. He looked back at Lumo, who sat near the cabin door, weak and pale, his blue light fading. "You need to rest," John said softly. "They're coming, and I can't fight if you're not safe." Lumo shook his head. Together, his voice was small but firm. John smiled sadly. "You sound just like my son." He knelt beside the little alien and put a hand on his shoulder. "I don't know what they want from you, but I know this. They won't take you. Not while I'm breathing." Lumo's eyes glowed faint gold. And for a moment warmth filled the air. Then far away came the sound they both feared, the hum of engines. The soldiers were here. 4 black ships descended through the clouds, red lights cutting through the mist. They landed silently in a circle around the valley. From each one, armored figures stepped out, weapons glowing with deadly light. Commander Varric led them, his armor shining blood red under the lightning. His voice echoed through the forest. "Human, you cannot win. Surrender the child and live." John raised his rifle and shouted back, "You'll have to kill me first." Varric paused, amused. "That can be arranged." He raised his hand. "Advance." The soldiers moved in perfect formation, scanning the ground. One of them stepped on a wire. Boom! The explosion tore through the clearing, throwing dirt and smoke into the air. Trees cracked and fell. John fired his rifle, hitting another trap that sent a burst of flame across the path. 2 soldiers were thrown backward, their armor glowing white-hot. Varric didn't even flinch. "Primitive," he said coldly, "but effective." He motioned to his troops. "Flank him." John ran back toward the cabin, firing behind him. Sparks flew as energy blasts hit the trees. One burned across his shoulder, but he didn't stop. Inside, he found Lumo standing by the window, hands glowing. "No," John said quickly, "don't use your power. It's killing you." Lumo looked up, his small face filled with tears of light. My father." Before John could respond, the door exploded open. A soldier stepped through the smoke, weapon raised. John tackled him, both falling to the floor. The soldier's strength was immense, but John grabbed a metal rod and jammed it into the armor's neck joint. Sparks flew. The soldier fell. More were coming. John pushed the door closed, breathing hard. He looked at Lumo. "It's okay. I'm right here." Outside, lightning struck. The ground trembled. Commander Varric himself was approaching, his armor glowing like molten steel. "End this," he ordered. The door burst apart. Varric stepped inside, towering over John. "You fought well for a primitive," he said. "But this is over." John raised the rifle, but Varric struck it away easily. His strength sent John crashing into the wall. Blood filled John's mouth, but he stood again, fists tight. "You'll never have him," John growled. Varric tilted his head. "Why do you protect him?" "He's not your kind." "Because no one protected mine," John said quietly. "I lost my son once. I won't lose him again." For the first time, Varric hesitated, but then his visor flared red. Sentiment. Weakness. He raised his arm to strike, but before the blow landed, Lumo screamed. A burst of golden light exploded from his small body, filling the entire cabin. Time seemed to stop. The soldiers outside froze mid-step. Trees bent under invisible wind. John shielded his eyes as the light grew brighter and brighter until it filled the sky. When it finally faded, the soldiers were gone, vaporized or scattered. The forest was silent again. John turned. The cabin was half destroyed, but Lumo was still there, lying on the ground, his glow fading. John rushed to him. "Hey, stay with me." Lumo looked up weakly. "Safe." Now, tears filled John's eyes. "You saved me." Lumo smiled faintly. "We saved each other." He reached out his tiny hand and touched John's heart. A golden mark appeared on John's chest, pulsing softly. Then Lumo's eyes closed. His light dimmed until only a faint warmth remained. John held him close, whispering, "You're not gone." "You can't be." Outside, the storm cleared, and the first light of dawn broke through the trees. John looked at the sky, where a soft golden glow lingered among the clouds, as if Lumo's spirit was watching. And deep inside him, the mark on his chest glowed brighter, keeping the promise alive. The war was over, but something greater had begun. The sun rose gently over the broken forest. Smoke curled from the burned trees and the air smelled of rain and ash. John sat on the cold ground holding Lumo in his arms. The small alien's glow had faded to a soft golden pulse, like the last flicker of a candle. Birds slowly began to sing again, as if the world didn't know a battle had just ended. John brushed the dirt from Lumo's small face. "You did it," he whispered. "They're gone." Lumo opened his eyes weakly. His voice was soft, almost a breath. "Gone. But more will come." John shook his head. "Let them come. I'll be ready." Lumo smiled faintly. "You fight like light." John chuckled through tears. "Guess I learned from the best." But deep down he could feel it. Lumo was fading. The golden mark on John's chest still glowed, warm against his skin, but Lumo's body was growing colder. "No," John whispered. "Don't you give up on me. We made it this far." Lumo reached up, his tiny fingers trembling, and touched the glowing mark on John's chest. "Not end. Change." John frowned. "What do you mean?" Before he could ask, the sky above them shimmered. A beam of soft light descended from the clouds, silent and pure. Within it, faint shapes appeared. Tall, graceful figures made of light. They weren't soldiers. They were peaceful, almost angelic. Lumo looked toward them, his eyes filled with tears of light. "Home?" he whispered. John stood, confused. "Your people?" "I thought they were not all gone," Lumo said. "Some far away, hiding." The light grew stronger, surrounding them both. John felt a strange calm, not fear, but peace. Lumo looked at him one last time. "You good father." John's throat tightened. "You're my son, Lumo, no matter where you go." The child smiled, and for a moment his golden glow flared bright again, brighter than ever before. The air shimmered with warmth and hope. "Not goodbye," Lumo said softly. "We still connected." John felt his heart ache as the beam began to lift Lumo upward. He reached out, but Lumo's light passed through his hands. "Lumo!" he shouted. The small alien looked down, eyes shining like tiny suns. "Always, with you." And then he was gone, a streak of light rising into the morning sky, vanishing among the clouds. Silence fell again. John stood alone in the clearing, staring at the empty sky. The mark on his chest pulsed gently, once, twice, then settled into a steady glow. He placed his hand over it and smiled through tears. "Goodbye, son," he whispered. He looked around at the forest, destroyed, yet still alive. He could hear the distant hum of the wind, the rustle of leaves. Somewhere out there, Lumo's light was still shining. John began walking back through the forest. Each step felt heavy, but his heart was lighter than it had been in years. The man who once lived in darkness now carried the light of another world within him. Days passed. The government later found the crash site, the burned clearing, and strange radiation readings, but no alien bodies, no soldiers, no proof of what had happened. Only John's small cabin remained, half-broken, filled with the faint smell of smoke and starlight. John stayed there, repairing what he could. At night, he looked at the stars, waiting. Sometimes the mark on his chest glowed brighter, and he knew Lumo was still out there, alive, growing, watching. One evening, as the sun set behind the trees, the radio on the table came to life on its own. Static first, then a soft voice, familiar and gentle. "Dad, light safe." "Thank you." John froze, tears filling his eyes. "Lumo?" The voice crackled but continued, faint and warm. "Promise, one day, return." Then the radio fell silent again. John smiled, staring at the horizon. "I'll be here, son. I'll be right here." The sky darkened and a single golden star flickered among the others, brighter than all the rest. John sat back, whispering into the quiet night. "We saved each other, didn't we?" The forest answered with a soft breeze, carrying the faint sound of a child's laughter through the trees. And for the first time in a long time, John believed in miracles again.